A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Hello and welcome to True Crime News, the podcast covering high-profile and under-the-radar cases from across the country every week. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. Our case this week, she is the accused Florida suitcase killer, Sarah Boone. She is charged with killing her boyfriend during a bizarre night of kinky games in which he supposedly climbed into a suitcase and she zipped him in and he died. It's an unusual case for sure, and now the courtroom antics of this accused killer have turned this murder case into a sideshow. 8 court-appointed and private attorneys have quit, calling Sarah Boone impossible to work with, and now she is representing herself. If this is the lead-up to the trial, what will the actual trial look like? We're recording this on Wednesday, August 21st of 2024. Our guest today is Dr. Judy Ho, a clinical and forensic neuropsychologist, an author of many books, a commentator and a dear friend of the show. Judy, you always make me so happy when you join us.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with you.
You're just, for all the dark things that you handle professionally in your life with people at such points of despair, you always have this light within you.
Trying my best, some days it's harder, like we were just talking about. And that's when I have to go back to, watching Cupcake Wars and things where I need to live in a land where that's the biggest problem, is making enough cupcakes in time.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes I think I should just be strawberry shortcake and live in that world, It's just sometimes too much. And this case, this case is sensational. It is ridiculous. And I think because of all the antics, because of the facts of the case, and then the antics since then, and this has been going on for 4 years now, that it's we can lose sight of the fact that a man has lost his life here, and we are so distracted by all this other stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just a real sad turn of events when we're so focused on all of these antics as opposed to the fact that, wow, this person just died. And that's never, that's not reversible. There's no coming back from that.
There isn't. And, lots of news organizations and crime organizations, it sounds almost sinister there, have been covering this every single day. We covered this originally 4 years ago when Sarah Boone was arrested. And we thought it was good to kind of catch everyone up in a different way because the trial was supposed to start this summer, but because she keeps, either she fires or her attorneys or the attorneys quit on her. Mm-hmm. We've gotten to a point where the judge actually said, that's it. We're done with you. We're not appointing you any more any more attorneys, although we will probably have an attorney sitting by you in case you have legal questions, which I'm not really sure how that works. Yeah, there's a lot here. So let's talk about the case and always keep in mind that at the end of the day, we're talking about a murder case, despite all of the antics. But Judy, from you, obviously we're going to want perspective because every time I see or read something about this woman in this case, I ask myself the same question. What is wrong with her?
I know.
What is wrong with her?
It's so unbelievable. And I know that with everything that you do, Anna, and all that you cover, the fact that would still get such a big reaction from you, that's saying something, that's really saying something.
Oh, it's just too much. All right. So this is the case of Sarah Boone. She was arrested 4 years ago in Winter Park, Florida, for the murder of her boyfriend, Jorge Torres. She is charged with second-degree murder. Now, the alleged facts were, of course, unbelievable. So unbelievable, as we said. She zipped him up in the suitcase. They were doing some kinky games that they were playing. Nothing funny about it. And I want to go back to the original 911 call because, as I always say, it's really the first police record of what's going on. And you can sometimes glean a lot of information from the 911 call. Well, this one was just so bizarre that even the 911 operator thought, I'm not hearing this right. is she saying that there's a man in a suitcase, right? It wasn't making any sense. So we're going to play the 911 call from where she explains that there is a dead man in her suitcase because they were playing a game. Here you go.
My boyfriend and I were playing last night, and I put him in his case and we were playing, and like kind of hide and seek kind of thing. So I fell asleep and I woke up and he was dead in the suitcase. So I don't know what happened. He has like blood coming out of his mouth, and I don't know if like he had like an aneurysm or what happened.
So as bizarre and weird as all of that sounds, if she had been drinking and they were both drinking, I suppose, Judy, it's possible that everything she said in there was true except for some other motives and a very damning videotape that will come up later. What do you think of this?
I mean, what I think is so interesting is that just from the beginning of what we've heard in terms of what she said, she literally acts like she believes she's truly the victim in all of this. Like she had no idea how this could have happened, and it was just fun and games, and oh my gosh, it went wrong, but it's not my fault. That's what I think is interesting, is that just from the very beginning of all of her conversations, it's almost like she was so delusional. She really believes that she had nothing to do with this, even though obviously, at the very least, this is an accidental death. And of course, as you said, Anna, there's a lot of evidence that it wasn't.
A lot of evidence, especially because of this very damning videotape, which we're going to get to in a second. But I want to play the next part of the 911 call because the 911 operator is struggling to understand what is going on. Listen again.
Okay, is he hanging from somewhere or what, ma'am?
No, I pulled him out of the suitcase. I tried giving him CPR.
Okay, so he was in a suitcase?
Yes, and I fell asleep.
How many times did the operator ask, he's in a suitcase? Like, it's just, no one can, this is not a normal 911 call.
Right. Absolutely not. I mean, it sounds like the 911 dispatcher was extremely confused. And, you know, it's sad to say this, but obviously 911 dispatchers do get a number of prank calls, right? It takes up resources for people who are actually having emergencies. But of course, this is not the first that we've heard of something like that. So I would imagine why this 911 caller was trying to figure out, well, is this a prank? Is this a true what's really happening? I really need to know how we're going to deal with this.
Yep. How are we going to deal with this? And by this time, poor George has been dead. The autopsy said George had been dead for 11 hours by the time first responders got there. That is a long time. That is a long time. And here's the other thing. If it was a game, if they were playing a game, she just had to unzip him and let him out, especially when he kept asking for help, right? And we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. So part of this sick game that they were playing, police say that Sarah used her cell phone to record video of George in the suitcase, zipped in this green suitcase, pleading for help. The video was officially released by the prosecutor, and we have a clip that we're going to play you via Fox 35 in Orlando. I want to warn everyone. This video is disturbing. It is disturbing because, you know, you can see the suitcase moving and jiggling in place while you hear George asking for help and kind of negotiating with Sarah. It's like, it's not funny anymore, let me out. And she laughs, which I guess one would say if you are playing a game, that's how you would react. Except the truth is, even when you are playing a game and someone says, stop, you've gone too far. The fact that you don't have a place in your brain or your heart to stop, what does that say about them, Judy?
Exactly. And you can tell, again, as we watch this video, that I think she understood that it was dire, and yet she was essentially keeping him in this really difficult and at obviously she should have known, a life-threatening place on purpose. She was taunting him. So that's very different from just, oh, well, this was fun and games and now it's time to stop. She knew that at that point he was begging, and yet she taunted him. And she essentially seemed like she was reveling in the power that she had over him in that position.
Yeah, she certainly does seem that way. So she's laughing. And also, I think she sounds intoxicated because she's slurring her words. So that would certainly line up with her story of, oh, I was drunk, I passed out. And that is also entirely possible. But again, she was taunting him. So if you don't want to listen to this and you don't want to look at it, I just want to warn everyone so you have a moment to turn away. Here's the clip.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
You.
Sarah.
You.
Sarah.
Stupid.
Judy, that comment about this is for everything you have done to me.
Exactly.
That seems very revealing.
That's very revealing. We know that there is a history of domestic violence in this relationship. It was repeated. This was not a healthy relationship. This was a very toxic relationship, it seems. And based on what she was saying, essentially she was getting back at him for the times when perhaps he was violent towards her, degraded her in any way with his words. She was using this as retribution, essentially.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that goes to motive. The question is, and I think this will be the hard part for the jury, put all the antics aside. Did she intend to kill him? Did she think that this would lead to death? Or
Right.
was it really a horrible accident and she has no heart? I don't know.
Right.
Because
that's
there's
for
still
a jury to decide, I guess. But
yes.
I feel like there's definitely a court of public opinion so far.
Absolutely. It's like, well, what do you think is going to happen if you trap a man in a suitcase and you leave him overnight? And, he's in there for 11 hours. And I don't know if it's a mitigating factor at all that she fell asleep. That actually sounds plausible to me, right? If she's
Right.
been drinking and, she's slurring her words on that video, and maybe she nodded off and totally forgot about him, which is what her story is. But the problem is that someone has died in the process.
Exactly. So how much can you really say? I absolutely had no idea. And I just, I passed out after being drunk, etc. I mean, and her story and the timeline just doesn't really totally make sense either, that it was 30 minutes and she just went to sleep. Like, really? So you just decided that it was like a normal night and you were just going to go to bed and tuck yourself in and yeah, it's fine. My boyfriend will find his way out eventually. That was supposedly what she said about her belief that he was going to be okay.
Yeah, and there was something wrong with the suitcase because they had it out, they were going to donate it, and there was something wrong with the zipper. So she said that she was using a paper clip to pull it closed, which, I mean, I don't know whether you can get out of a suitcase if you're in it because I don't know how you would move the zipper. But again, suitcases are not built to put human beings in. That is not their purpose. If you're like me, you're constantly thinking about the safety of the people and the things that you value most. After years of discussing these stories each week on True Crime News, the podcast, I knew I needed to secure my home with the best. And after a lot of research, I landed with Simply Safe. I've trusted Simply Safe to protect my home for a couple of years now, and the level of security and customer care has been incredible. I sleep better every night knowing that Simply Safe 24/7 monitoring agents are standing by to protect me if someone tries to break in and to send emergency help when I need it most. I want you to have the same peace of mind that I and so many listeners experience every day, which is why I've partnered with Simply Safe to offer listeners 20% off a system. Just visit simplysafe.com/truecrime. What I love most is that Simply Safe just keeps getting better. With exclusive live guard protection, Simply Safe agents can act within 5 seconds of receiving your alarm and can even see and speak to intruders inside your home, warning them the police are on their way. As a Simply Safe user, it's no surprise that Simply Safe has been named Best Home Security Systems by U.S. News & World Report for 5 years running, and the best customer service in home security by Newsweek. Protect your home this summer with 20% off any new Simply Safe system when you sign up for Fast Protect monitoring. Just visit simplysafe.com/truecrime. That's simplysafe.com/truecrime. There's no safe like Simply Safe. So, this incident happened on February 23rd of 2020, and I do want to touch on what you're talking about here, Judy, because it's very interesting what she did when she figured out that George was missing. And that's the part that doesn't make any sense to me. So she wakes up the next morning, which would be February 24th. She didn't find George in bed, so she assumed he was downstairs on his laptop. Then she could hear his phone ringing, I guess, and her phone ringing. She ignores the calls. Then she goes to check her phone at about 11 a.m., and she thinks that it's going to be her ex-husband. She has a child with her ex-husband, Brian. And she, to deal with, custody things, who's going to have the child when. So when she grabs the phone, she says she didn't see George. So she thought, now the suitcase is still there, but apparently she says she doesn't connect the fact that the last place she saw George was in the suitcase until, I guess, something jogs her memory, and she's like, let me just check that suitcase. And of course she finds George. George is dead. George is dead. Here is another damning piece of evidence. Instead of calling 911 immediately, she calls her ex-husband, Brian, who lived a few minutes away, and asked him to come over and help. Now, why would you do that?
Yeah. Instead of calling 911 immediately when you know someone has died, especially if it was an accident, right?
Right. Yeah. So Brian reportedly saw what was going on, and he's like, you have got to call 911 immediately. I'm getting out of here. I'm going to stand outside, and I'm waiting for first responders. So, okay, there's one level-headed person in this situation who knows what to do. And that just, again, not thinking clearly, just really bad decisions. So, according to the coroner's findings, the autopsy was conducted in February. Medical examiner ruled that George died of asphyxiation and the manner of death being a homicide. They believe that George was in that suitcase for 11 hours. They said that he had alcohol in his system, which could lead to this whole, we're playing drunk games. That he had suffered additional injuries, and also he had these long nail scratches on his upper back, along with a long scratch around his neck. He had a contusion on his left shoulder, signs of contusions from blunt force trauma on his skull and forehead. So where would that have come from? I don't think that's just going to come from him being in a suitcase.
No.
Did she hit him?
Right. Yeah, it sounds like they had another domestic violence event probably right before this, and perhaps it wasn't as she was saying, which is, they were just having fun. They had a couple of drinks and thought it'd be funny to put him in a suitcase. Somehow she obviously got him in there, but it doesn't appear that the whole night was all about fun and games, especially if those wounds were relatively fresh.
Yes. And so when she's interrogated at the police department about the scratches on George's back, she immediately admits, she says, that happened during sex. Okay, that's possible.
Yeah.
That is possible. Again, this is not a typical relationship. Now, the thing is, we have all this evidence, right, just already documented in video. So we saw the man in the suitcase pleading for help. But this is how she describes the beginning of the night, which again, I mean, I suppose it's possible, but she said that she and George were painting pictures, working on a puzzle, and drinking some Chardonnay. Really?
Really?
Really? Puzzles?
Nope. Sounds like the opposite kind of night that they had.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose it's possible it started that way. I don't know. I do want to talk about the domestic violence because I think this is an incredibly important part of this investigation and just as background and context to the kind of relationship that they had. So in July of 2018, Sarah was charged with battery by strangulation. Sarah reportedly claimed that George had kicked her in the eye and then had, dragged her up the stairs because she supposedly talked to a man in a bar. George told authorities that Sarah was strangling him and that he kicked her off because he was becoming incapacitated. So that's how she got kicked in the eye, he said. And deputies claimed in the affidavit that they could not determine who was the primary aggressor in this incident, which can be a challenge in domestic violence situations, that sometimes the person defending themselves comes off as the aggressor. You don't know. So then, next year, in 2019, George is charged with battery on 3 different occasions. The most recent incident occurred in September of that year, with Sarah claiming that George punched her in the ear and the side of the head. And according to the affidavit, a temporary protection injunction was in place at the time. Clearly, based on these records, these published reports, this was a violent relationship. And I do not know who was the aggressor or if they were both violent towards each other, which is what it appears to be.
Right. Yeah, it does sound like they were probably both aggressors. And obviously that is really common in domestic violence relationships, especially when it's a repeated pattern of domestic violence. It's not just 1 or 2 times. It's just like a way that they've come to interact. And the problem is there's a really high risk of individuals in domestic violence partnerships, especially as the relationship goes on over time, that the potential physical aggression will escalate and someone will either become extremely hurt or even die. And unfortunately, this is the case that we're seeing here.
This is the worst possible outcome. It really is. And then, neighbors have claimed that Sarah was really nice and a talkative neighbor. I mean, if you've been following her antics in court, she definitely always has something to say. She's got a lot to say, this one. But they added, quote, she also had her moments, and witnesses claim that they could hear the couple fighting and that they had observed that deputies had stopped at their residence several times. So all of that is lining up very clearly. I don't know how any of this is going to work in court. Look, this is a horrible and tragic relationship. It was violent. It was dangerous. And I don't know if she can completely try and present herself as the victim here. As you've said from the very beginning, she has said she's a victim. And the thing is, she has, how can I put this, Judy? I mean, in many ways, they're each victims of domestic violence, of each other's violence on the other.
Right. And it's as if they don't really know another way to resolve conflict anymore. And that is one of the most problematic issues. And then when you mix alcohol into it, there's obviously going to be more impulse control problems. People are going to overreact more than they otherwise would. So taking those inhibitors off, especially due to the drinking, that's a real problem.
Yeah, and Sarah had, I guess, flip-flopped according to authorities. She wasn't intoxicated. She was intoxicated. She, I guess, went back and forth on that one. Mm-hmm. And after that interrogation where she admitted that they'd had rough sex, she had scratched him, then she admitted that they had been drinking, that this was all a game, She's taken into custody and she's been in jail ever since. So this entire time she's been behind bars. And she's gone through these 8 attorneys, and the judge said 8 is enough. So now she will be representing herself. One of my favorite parts of summer is sharing great food and great friends on the grill. Burgers, hot dogs, the essential foods of summer. But one thing that sometimes gets overlooked is the bun. And it should not. Sometimes it can be the difference between a great burger and a sloppy mess. Hero Bread reinvented the bread and buns that make summer great. Fluffy, delicious flavor, and texture. However, with no net carbs, 0 grams of sugar, and fewer calories, plus protein and fiber. I've tried other healthy or low carb breads before, but the texture could be hit or miss, which is why I was so surprised when I tried Hero Bread. All the great parts of your favorite bread or the bun with that extra protein and fiber without all of those carbs. Hero Bread has all your favorites, really with no consequences or compromises, with 0 to 1 gram of net carbs, 0 grams of sugar, and high in fiber. Hero Bread is an easy choice. Plus, they have something for every craving, including sliced bread loaves or buns, even tortillas. Keep carbs out of summer without compromising flavor with Hero Bread. Get 10% off your order at hero.co and use True Crime at checkout. That's True Crime at hero.co. Now, here is what is so interesting. Last month, a judge ruled in July that Sarah had forfeited her right to any more counsel. And I guess, because if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you, right? That is one of the rights that we have in this country. And I never realized that there's a limit there, that a judge can say, that's it, lady, you're done. We've given you every opportunity, and I suppose that is the judge's discretion. I just wonder if at some point, depending on when the jury reaches a verdict, once this finally does go to trial, will that be cause for an appeal? It's like she didn't have proper representation. It's a mess. This entire case is a mess. It challenges everyone's patience at trying to get justice for the victim here.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's just a lot of distracting antics, right, that make it harder for them to just go forward with the case and try to get a jury to really listen to the evidence and hopefully be impartial and render a fair decision.
So since she will be representing herself, there are a number of things that are going on. I did want to touch on one thing that I found, because this again goes to what is wrong with this woman. So at one point, she actually drew it all up. She prepares this advertisement, like hiring now advertisement for an attorney to represent her. And she writes that she's looking for a real go-getter who could handle a high-profile case, and that the attorney can be guaranteed TV coverage. And, she uses different size font and everything. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
What? Where are you going to place this ad? There's almost a weird, is that innocence or is that bravado? I don't know what that is, Judy.
Yeah, Anna, do you have a copy of it? Because
yes, I do.
It looks insane. It looks like a kid's art project in school. I mean, there's like little stars and it's like a joke, I mean, I think she just hand designed this thinking that it was going to attract somebody who says, hey, I want to represent this person because I want fame for myself. But yeah, like you said, making promises about the person being famous and guaranteed coverage. But all of this done when this is a man who died, all of this done in such a lighthearted way, again, with all the decorations. I mean, when I first saw this, I just thought it was unbelievable.
So do you think there is something wrong with her?
I mean, where do we start? I'm sure. I mean, I guess, I would be interested. I'm not sure why, and I don't know the procedure for this, Anna. Like, why hasn't the court ordered a psychological evaluation of some sort? Have they determined that she's even able to put together a decent defense? How come someone hasn't questioned that? I mean, I don't know the details of why these attorneys quit, but did anybody say, hey, maybe this person is not cognitively able to understand the consequences of their charges and maybe cannot actually adequately defend themselves or help an attorney meaningfully prepare a defense? And maybe we need to look for some other avenues, get her treatment so that she can be in a better place so that she can actually understand what happened here and be able to prepare a defense. I don't know if that's ever been questioned, or just in general with a case like this, you would imagine that maybe an attorney would say, hey, we might need to bring a psychologist in to see if there are any mitigating factors. Again, that might be the part of a meaningful defense for the person. Like, hey, don't put your usual consequences on this person if maybe they were in the middle of a psychotic episode or suffering from some really severe mental illness where they didn't totally know right from wrong. Maybe the reason why none of that has been done, though, is because she keeps not getting along with her attorneys. And before they can actually enact a strategy, they're gone.
Yeah. They've all said the same thing. She's impossible to work with. She will not listen to them. She calls them constantly. And then when she finally does get them on a Zoom call or however she gets them on the phone, she's trying to tell them how to defend. And she won't listen. She is impossible and she's driving them nuts. And so, there are really impossible and difficult people in the world. She may not be mentally ill. She just could be one of these people, right? That's just can't get along. Just can't get along with the world. That's certainly how she is appearing. But now that she is representing herself, certain key things have happened because trial was supposed to start in July. That's part of what's happening here is this constant delay because trial has been delayed now because she doesn't have an attorney. And since she is representing herself, there are certain things that she gets to do. So here are the arguments that she has made to the judge. And again, all of this is playing all day long on like court TV. We cannot cover every minute of the life of Sarah Boone behind bars and in court. But I would say this is a good catch-up, if you just have a little interest in this case. Okay, so she says to the judge, look, if I'm going to be in court, you cannot have me shackled. And she's saying like, I'm hurting my wrists just trying to get to my pen and paper. I need to be able to be without cuffs in the courtroom when I speak to the jury. So they are worried about Sarah Boone being able to use self-control on herself. As you can imagine, they're worried about this woman just like running free in the courtroom. And that is a very reasonable thing to worry about. So the judge said, okay, I understand what you're saying. Yes, you have a right to not stand there, all shackled trying to convince the jury, that I'm innocent. So they came up with a plan. They're going to put a cuff on her ankle. It's called a stun cuff. And it can discharge 50,000 volts in case she gets out of control. And there's going to be one deputy holding the button watching her. Now, okay. Her argument has been, I cannot be treated fairly if the jury sees me all shackled, right? So then she's talking to the judge about what she can wear in court. It's like, so she says to the judge, I would like to wear a dress. And the judge says to her, but Miss Boone, if you wear a dress, the jury will see the big cuff that we've put on you. It's just like, I still want to wear the dress.
Oh my gosh.
Like, what do you do with this? What do you do with this? Okay, so that's one example, Judy. Then the other is, there is evidence against her, right? And so she has a right to view and review the evidence against her, which is a very interesting position it puts her in. But now, of course, they're worried if she touches any of it, she'll destroy it. So the judge has come up with a plan where she will be able to review the evidence against her in preparation for trial, but she's not allowed to touch it. So I guess there are going to be people from the DA's office, right, standing there holding up evidence and showing her things.
Oh my gosh.
Is it? I mean, honestly, and it's like our court system, right? Understaffed, right? Too many cases, backlog. And I feel like the entire state of Florida is working to help one Sarah Boone.
Oh my gosh. I know. I mean, there's so many resources being diverted to this. And I guess at the very least, what we can be happy about is certainly the court is being fair, trying their best despite how difficult she is to work with. They're trying to give her an adequate chance at fairness and a defense. But the fact that they have to do this and handhold her so much, this is what I was talking about earlier, Anna. Is she really equipped to defend herself? And if not, should the trial be put on hold until they can determine that she is? I mean, something's off here, right? It just seems like they shouldn't be going ahead with this.
Something is off, but Judy, we've been discussing this for years. This whole trying to understand there's this place in the middle between experts like yourself who can diagnose people with real severe mental illness. And then, as I say, there are just people in this world who are just always difficult and miserable. And personally, not educated in this area, but I'm like, just my personal observations as a human is these people are difficult, hard to work with, don't get along with others. That isn't necessarily, a mental illness. They're just miserable people.
You are right. And so what is this, right? Like, is this somebody who is ill and needs resources before they can enact a good defense? Or is this just somebody where, wow, this is just what they're like, and maybe even with treatment, that's not going to change. So we just got to work with what we have. And maybe that's what the judge decided, because obviously this judge has had a lot of interactions with her.
I mean, I'm sure you've seen people in your practice who, you can tell them a million times, well, if you keep doing that, of course, you're not going to have a successful relationship. And yet, no matter how many times you try to explain to them, if you don't change your ways, you are just repeating the same thing over and over again. And there are just people like that who just don't listen.
Right. Exactly. And maybe that's what's going on. Maybe that's what the judge has decided and said, if this is how you're going to be, then we're going to work with this exactly from where you are now, and we're going to move forward. And that's it. I'm sure the judge wants to be done and get this case off their docket in many ways.
She does sound very clear. She expresses what she wants or doesn't want her way.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if the word is, is it delusional that someone is actually going to print up her little ad for this magical attorney plucked from, I don't know, some TV show that she loves.
Right.
I do not know. Anyway, this trial is now scheduled for October 7th. And the judge has said, and I'm sure the judge has just about had it here, this date will not change pending, quote, extraordinarily good cause.
Yep.
I don't know what extraordinarily good cause is.
I mean, I guess they have to leave an opening in case something really happens where they have to delay it. But as we were just talking about, I think the judge is basically at the end of their rope.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, honestly, you're going to need counseling for everyone involved in this case because it's just so stress-inducing. And again, it is a massive distraction from the question and the issue at hand.
I know.
What happened? Was this intentional? Was this an accident? Did she know what would happen? And how is she held accountable if she, the video is there. The man is in the suitcase and he could not have zipped himself in it. right? I don't care what you try to explain away. So the question is, what responsibility does she have in the death of George Torres?
Right.
Boy, to be a jury on this case.
Oh my gosh. And can you imagine? I mean, I guess they'll still always, sometimes they still find people who've never heard of the case before, but there's been so much coverage on it. This video is out there. I'm sure they'll play the video again, of course, but it's really hard. I think it's going to be hard to find a completely impartial jury. People are going to have an idea of, especially her tone of voice when she was taunting him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
And Anna, I think one of the things that you'd have to consider too is, when you talk about this self-defense category, when you are in an abusive relationship, there has to be some kind of connection made between the danger being there in that moment, as opposed to, okay, it's just kind of this danger that's lurking, but the person's not advancing towards you at that time aggressively. So, I mean, in this case, George could not have been advancing towards her. He was locked up in a suitcase. So I do wonder. I mean, I think that defense is probably out the window, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know what her defense. I think the only defense she has is she was drunk. She fell asleep because she was so intoxicated. She had no idea, and her intention was never to kill George. But the fact that George did die, and any reasonable person would know that no good would come of this, is how do you then hold her accountable?
Right. And also her actions after the fact, not calling law enforcement right away and all of those things.
We'll see. Stay tuned.
See. Stay tuned.
It is time for our comments section. These are the crime cases you all are talking about on social media, and here's our producer, Will Updike. Hey, Will.
Hey, Anna. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. Judy, always great to see you.
Nice to see you too.
All right, so this week we have a case of a helping hand or wing. The case comes out of Harvey, Illinois, where an NFL star has offered to pay up to $1.5 million to refund stolen chicken wings and free a cafeteria worker. Now, you might remember this case. We covered it here on the comment section about a year ago when Vera Liddell, who worked as a cafeteria consultant for an Illinois school district, was accused of stealing 11,000 cases of chicken wings valued at $1.5 million. Now, the theft occurred between July 2020 and February 2022 before it was uncovered by the district's business manager during like a routine mid-year audit. Apparently, the food service department was $300,000 over budget. And apparently she was taking these wings, even picking them up in a school district van and then selling them. And we'll kind of get into the why here in just a sec. But really the saddest part about this whole case is that this budget and the food was intended for take-home meals for underprivileged students during COVID, during the COVID shutdown. So like, such a great cause here. Like, a lot of people getting a lot of things moving to serve, children in need. It's a really, really noble cause. Really, really sad that it ended up this way. But I got to be honest, like the motive behind this has always kind of puzzled me. Like, I get it. It's money. I mean, if you can come up with $1.5 million, obviously a lot of money. And the now sentenced here, Vera Liddell, has apparently struggled with money issues, filed for bankruptcy twice between 2009 and 2016, according to court documents from Chicago. Now, the defense attorney has actually given some more sort of insight on the motivation of the theft. Her lawyer said she's just a little sweetheart that's got a gambling problem, adding she feels beyond terrible about this. This is totally uncharacteristic of her. It was the disease taking over. And apparently she did feel very guilty about this. She pleaded guilty to felony theft of over $1 million and was sentenced to 9 years in prison. A fairly heavy sentence, but we could talk about that. But what's interesting is the same day as she received her sentence, Chris Jones, an NFL player who plays defensive tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs, retweeted an article about her sentence, adding, "I'll pay for the wings that she stole to get her free." So, this was kind of a big deal on the internet. People are like, oh, is this really real? Apparently, Her attorney went through a lot of work to try and contact them, and I guess the offer is standing. People magazine also spoke to a rep for the Kansas City Chiefs to confirm, whether this was real or not. And apparently, Jones representatives told People that they are in contact with Vera's attorney and they're gathering information on the case. So unclear, how much he really knew about this case and the circumstances, because I don't know if that would change your mind at all about putting up the $1.5 million. But so you could get some sort of restitution here, right?
Yeah.
It seems like that's an okay outcome. Unfortunately, it might not be that simple. So according to Vera's lawyer, even if this offer ends up holding up, it might not amount to anything. So her defense right now has 30 days to submit a motion to vacate her plea, and then they can request a repayment of restitution instead of this, instead of what she was given here. So we're gonna have to see what happens. Obviously, the clock is kind of ticking on this one as to what's actually gonna happen. But I do think it's really interesting because, she did something really bad, really not great. 9 years maybe seems like kind of a long time, which some people had some stuff to say about. Yeah,
it does.
$1.5 million though
that's
it's
a
not
huge
nothing.
amount. That I really want Judy to weigh in on this one, because if you've ever known a gambler, someone with a gambling addiction,
Right. Yeah.
it sometimes, how can I put this? There isn't a lot of compassion for people with gambling addictions. But if you've ever seen the damage that it has done to families, which I have, then you would understand how out of control they are. It is truly like a drug, and they will actually harm their own families just to get the money, just to get that bet.
That's right, Anna. And the gambling addiction, there's a reason why that was made an official diagnosis in the DSM-5, which is, of course, the diagnostic manual psychologists and psychiatrists use to diagnose illnesses. And the reason why they equated that with a substance or alcohol addiction is that it has a lot of the same effects on the person. So they'll stop at nothing to get that hit, that substance, whatever, that behavior, whatever it is. It unnaturally spikes dopamine in your system. It interferes with your decision making. So I guess, if that's the case, and that she was saying this is for a program that's going to go to children who need the food, I think that that's what's going to be hard for people to understand. Like, okay, fine, you have an addiction, but do you have to lie to this degree and essentially use it, to essentially fuel something that truly you should know isn't healthy for you? But that's the problem with addiction. You don't know. You in the moment, you're just do anything that you can to get that fix that you need. So it's super sad. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that maybe this was considered as like a mitigating thing in this plea and sentence. Apparently the sentencing guidelines fall for something like this between 6 and 30 years. She got, like I said, she received around 9. I think she'd be eligible for parole after around 8 of the years. So, maybe that was considered somewhat that this was related to, an addiction. But yeah, I don't know. I guess the thing to me still is like, yes, what she did was wrong. Clearly she has some underlying issues here, but her being in jail for 9 years does nothing for the $1.5 million. That's gone. And then in this alternative, if the school district was to, receive this money, I don't know. Is that not a more just end? I'm just not really sure.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well,
Yeah.
To try and make the program whole again, and to make sure that children are taken care of, right? That is a form of justice, right? Because we always have that discussion: what would justice look like in this case? And it's not always the same. So I hear you on that, and I think getting that money back for the kids in the school food program, I think, is very important. What troubles me about her, she should be punished, right? I think even if there has to be a punishment, is this the right punishment is the question. I just see over and over again, whether it's attempted murder, assault, violent assault, or murder, that people are sentenced to less than that. And this is the part that drives me nuts when it comes to justice. is what she did, is that the amount of time she should serve behind bars? Because some killers don't get that.
Yeah.
They just don't.
Yeah. So hard with sentencing, right? I mean, how do you make it fair? And also it depends on the jury, the judge, and sometimes the jury doesn't sentence, the judge does. I mean, there's so many different factors. That's so hard.
Yeah, a lot of people in the comments were kind of split on this sentence. Chrissy M said, with today's economy, that's probably not many wings, but seriously, 9 years for wings. And Sammy Girl said, the sentence seems a bit harsh, but she stole from children. It's pretty gross. So I can definitely see both sides of where you sort of fall on that. And then, some people also just kind of had some sort of mixed feelings about, this NFL star's kind of offer in this, whether this was a great thing or not. Kiki D said, I applaud him. The punishment doesn't fit the crime. Hopefully she learns from this. He'll forever be blessed. So on board there with this, I can kind of see that. Like I said, I mean, to me, I do think she should still have to have some sort of punishment, but like the money going back to the district to me is like the best of the outcomes. Jaguar Paw was not on board with this. They said, feed children with it, not bail her out, which, I mean, isn't that kind of what it's doing if the money goes to the school district? I don't really know. But I do understand, too, like, what kind of message does that send? Like if somebody gets someone out of a punishment by like ponying up the money, like, does that set a bad precedent? I don't really know.
She may not get out of the punishment, though. That's the whole thing. I think the mixture here is there has to be consequences for actions, right? That is a core value, I believe. So that's still to be determined. And the mitigating factor, maybe not even so much for her, but for the community to try and make this right, is to help that community that was something valuable was stolen from these children. So if this NFL player wants to help the children and do that, and at the same time make that a mitigating factor, but again, not escaping justice, it's just kind of rebalancing it. Yeah,
no, I like that. It is kind of a rebalancing.
Right.
But anyways, thanks for everybody who chimed in on that one. You can do that over on our YouTube community page. You can also reach out to us across all social media. We're at My True Crime News, and want to give a little plug. We have a all-new crime show coming to television, airing September 9th. You can find out where to watch that at My True Crime News. And if we have it, we'll drop a little promo here.
I'm Ana Garcia. Every crime tells a story, and every story demands justice. I'm excited to announce that this fall, we're bringing an all-new crime series to television. True Crime News will cover breaking crime stories, investigate, and go deeper. What do you think happened to Kelsey?
I think she was murdered.
Who do you think murdered her? We hope you'll join us as your daily source of true crime news, weekdays this fall. Visit truecrimenews.com for local listings.
Yay!
All right.
I can't wait to see the show. I'm so excited for you guys.
Oh my goodness. We have been busy. I just got back from Utah on assignment.
Oh
so
my gosh.
Working on a lot of cold cases, just working so many cases. And the amazing thing is, and why I love this podcast, like I love this podcast because it's so interactive and we all form this community and have this discussion, which is like, I don't know, it's just wonderful. And you would be surprised how many cases that we have discussed here on the podcast first.
Yay.
that we are now expanding on with extra resources that we didn't have before because now we have a television show.
My gosh.
I'm very excited about the possibilities, right? Really excited
Can't wait to
about
see
the
it.
possibilities.
Yeah,
but it's
absolutely.
a lot.
I know, Anna's all over the place. She's everywhere.
Yeah, you guys are doing double duty. You got this podcast plus a TV show. I don't know.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's definitely a lot. But don't worry, we're not going anywhere. We're keeping the podcast. We love our podcasts.
Yay.
We'll just have more stuff for you. That's all. That's the cool stuff for all of you. And so many of you have been asking. It's like, well, wait a minute. I may not be able to see the show. It's like, we'll figure it out. We're working on it. We'll figure it out for everybody. It'll be all right.
But that'll do it for this week's comment section. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you all next week.
I will. So, Judy, I do want to talk about your latest book because I honestly feel like it applies to the case we talked about earlier about attachments and people forming healthy, bonds that lead to healthy relationships.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for the shout out to my work on attachment. I mean, relationship quality is one of the biggest determining factors of longevity of life, as well as mental wellness and happiness. So there's so many different things that, having healthy, strong relationships can do for you. And I do wonder sometimes if people had better models for that, where they would be instead of, unfortunately, being featured on your podcast.
Yes. If only they had better attachment models.
Maybe.
That's the solution.
Might be one of the many things that need to be in place, but yes.
But it is important, right? Because, kids are so resilient and they can survive anything, right? And so we've seen so many amazing young people who had it so hard and somehow they plow through when they had so very little. But really, not everyone can manage. Not everyone. Right? Not everyone is strong enough to say, I'm going to do my best, to shield myself from this and get out of this bad situation. But that isn't fair either.
No, it's not. So, what's the real answer here? It's hard. There's so many different things.
Hopefully when we become adults and we seek out to better ourselves and better understand ourselves, that, we seek the tools, whether it's through a book or whether it's through professional help or however you find enlightenment and clarity about who you are and to be a better person. I think we all, honestly, I do, even though I cover crime, I believe people are basically good, and most people are good, but there are some people who do some really, really bad things.
Exactly.
And I think the hardest for us is when we discuss cases in which you have an otherwise outstanding human being,
right?
Maybe with minimal red flags, and then they do something heinous and we can't figure that out.
Exactly.
And it scares us.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I think, why so many people want to hear about these stories. They want to learn from them. They want to say, well, was there a red flag somewhere that I missed? Or how could I make sure that nobody like this is in my life right now? I mean, it makes sense. People want to learn these lessons for themselves, and sometimes they do seem so incredible in that there was no previous record of any sort. And then something like this happens.
Yeah, really, really scary. Well, Judy, thank you for guiding us through the scary. You're always particularly good at that.
Oh boy, this case was a real doozy. So thanks for having me on. I'm always happy to see you and so excited about your TV show. Oh my gosh, I'm definitely going to be watching. So.
I hope that you'll be joining us because we can always use your clarity in these cases. So I look forward to you joining us on the show. Judy, where can people find you and follow you?
So you can find me at my website, drjudyho.com, sign up for my newsletter there, and also follow me on social media at Dr. Judy Ho.
And I have signed up for this newsletter, so I can just let you all know that she really does send out stuff. But my favorite is your Instagram, as you know. I love your Instagram. It is my favorite thing. I can't wait till you start again with the recipes, the piano playing, and the singing. That's when I find joy in the world, when Judy sings to me.
Oh, thank you. I'll do a private concert for you sometime. Next time I see you in person.
Okay, I would love that. We'll get a piano on the set.
That's right.
Soothing songs from Dr. Judy Ho to help you get through the day.
In between takes where you're talking about something so stressful, we're going to do some music therapy.
There you go. Oh, my goodness. You can find me at Ana G News. You can find everything we do at My True Crime News, which is great. Our social media handles have all been made so easy now. So we are so easy to find. This podcast, you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we, too, have a newsletter that we send out. And you can sign up for that at truecrimenews.com. So until next week, this is True Crime News, the podcast. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. And as we always say, don't do crime.